Hello and welcome to this brand new episode of the Climate Clock podcast. We're meeting after a long time, but trust me, it's going to be a great conversation that you're going to be tuning into. We know sustainability is a collective responsibility. A lot needs to be done at individual levels as well, but a lot's happening at the corporate level, and a lot of organizations they're collaborating with corporates to ensure that this action is faster. And there have been a lot of conversations in the recent COP as well did not satisfy a lot of the institutions or the stakeholders. It was quite a lot of disappointments. But what next? What can be done to ensure that corporates contribute as much to sustainability efforts? I have with me a very special guest in the studio today, Divya Sharma, who's the Executive Director India at the Climate Group. Divya, such a pleasure to have you with us in the studios today. And while we talk about it, always corporates are doing this, corporates are doing that, and that's all even corporates can talk about now. Climate Group is doing a lot here to ensure that the action is faster. But let's start with the basics first. When it comes to sustainability, as I said, yes, it's an individual duty, but a duty at a larger level as well. Uh, are corporates doing enough right now? What's been your take, your experience so far? And what are some of the challenges that they are facing?
And very pleased to be here. And thank you for having me. I think it's a great question to begin with. If we look at India's ambition around economic development, we will be moving from a 3 trillion economy to a 12 trillion economy by 2070. And our target is that we should be at least 5 trillion economy by 2030, which is close. But on the other hand, it is also true that a country like India is extremely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We are at a seventh rank at the Global Vulnerability Index, which was recorded at 2021. Later, Ministry of Earth Sciences came up with a report and a study in its indigenous research, which gives us striking results of how devastating climate impacts will be for a country like India. Now, these are two major questions. How do we equip ourselves to economic development of the order that we aspire for, but also adapt and make our systems and people and communities resilient to climate impacts? Now, where does the businesses come? The businesses come because we think that they have the power and they have the influence to bring bigger change. If they are ambitious enough for energy transition, for decarbonization, to change their systems and to influence markets, policies, as well as supply chains, I think this journey to transition and the journey to net zero India will be much more quicker and faster, and that is what we need actually.
Hmm. Do you think it's fast enough right now? Since you said 2050 is also approaching, 2030 is approaching, of course, faster. Some of the challenges that you've seen in your experience corporates are facing right now?
So I think more than challenges, it's about whether they are ambitious enough. So in our experience, we work with very large corporates. We do it very deliberately because we think that they can bring in resources and they can very quickly scale up and extend their footprint. They are capable enough to influence their supply chain, bring newer market, and that adoption and demand side signals are something that these businesses can bring up. Now, some of the challenges that they face are they're basically two-sided. One is policy related challenges. Sometimes policies are not attuned to make that shift. For example, some of our hundreds campaign, RE100, EV100, EP100, are those campaigns that ask businesses to do 100% transition. There is no midway. When you are taking a membership to RE100, for example, you are actually saying that we will transition our entire operation to be run by renewable electricity. You set the target here, but the ambition is absolute.
Got it.
So, unless there are policies that help them do it in the time frame that they want to do it, it is really difficult, and that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
The other challenge could be around technologies, maybe. So, it's changing and it's fast, but not fast enough that we would be happy about it.
Yeah.
So the pace is directly conducive to the ecosystem in which these businesses operate already and would like to operate.
Got it. So, I wanted to touch upon RE100 and the different programs that Climate Group has. Of course, that would be in the later part of the conversation, and some anecdotes that you can share. Who are the corporates who, if you can share those names, who have collaborated with the Climate Group as well? But in order to achieve these targets that a lot of these corporates have placed, they need to work towards it, of course. But the second thing is sometimes a lot of corporates want to appear sustainable. That's another problem. That's called greenwashing, where you're not sustainable but you appear very sustainable. Is that a big problem that you are seeing right now in the industry?
Not really. And why I say this is because not all the business that are into the business of sustainability or want to be sustainable are there for greenwashing. Um, because the kind of ambition and change that we are talking about needs them to put in a lot of serious investment, whether it is financial investment, whether it is policy investment, like internal policy investment. And also, it brings on a drastic change in the way they operate. That cannot happen if your minds are and hearts are not at the right place. That's one thing. The other thing is that through our programs and campaigns, there's an inbuilt accountability framework which asks them to not only measure their success but also disclose it. The other thing is that we deliberately keep away from businesses that have the potential of greenwashing. We work with those businesses that have great potential: heavy industries, transport system, energy system, food systems, where it is not only essential to bring that change and transition to green, but it is also possible to take bigger targets. So that is how we manage, that systemic change.
So you need to have accountability, you have to have goals in place and ensure that they are reporting enough to understand whether they are reaching those targets or not. The second, I don't know if it's misconception or if it really happens, is if you are working more towards sustainability, making your operations or your products sustainable, it would lead to something called as greenflation. It would be inflationary in nature. You will have to pay more for it. It'll be costlier. Where do you stand there?
Okay. See, in a country like India, which is a developing economy, price elasticity and the risks around it are very, very important to consider. We don't actually suggest or support inflation, green inflation, as you call it. In fact, we think that when bigger corporates and bigger businesses come together and they make a community of practice, they are actually influencing market so that the price comes down. All of our campaigns are demand side campaigns. We do so because we know that it will not only influence action and at a faster rate, but it will also bring down costs. Now, if you look at the cost of renewables in India at the moment, it's increasingly coming down. It's becoming easier to transition to renewable electricity day in and day out. And I think that is the way. I mean, nobody is going to come and change the price range for you. It is only the market change, market shift, and the demand that will make it for you. So I think that is how we would like to, move towards
The sustainable
avoiding
operation, yeah.
inflation, but also quick adoption of new technologies and quick energy transition.
Okay. Because what happened during COVID is the energy crisis in Europe, what we saw, people moving back to gas and coal because, no, gas prices became very expensive. So countries are moving back to coal. The question was, is moving towards greener actions more inflationary in nature? But I do get that point. So where does Climate Group come into the picture? If you can give us a sense, some anecdotes with the industries that you are collaborating with, be it heavy industries, logistics, transport, food, something that has stood out for you in these collaboration over years?
So we work with wide range of industries. Globally, we are working with 100, more than 150 companies. We are influencing 500 markets. Sorry, I said it differently. So we are working with
500
500
cup.
plus companies, influencing 148 markets. um, as I said, we work with systems that have the greatest potential to bring that change. When I say we work with heavy industries, we work with energy, we work with transport, this is how actually our campaigns are designed. So I said we have a RE100 campaign, we have an EV100 campaign, we have an EP100 campaign. We also have a campaign called Steel Zero and a Concrete Zero campaign. Now, what happens is that, for example, transport sector. Now, 90% of emissions come from the road transport sector. And EV100 is a campaign that asks companies to change their entire fleet to be run by electric vehicles. We also have an EV100 Plus campaign, which is electrification of medium and heavy trucking. Now, why are we trying to influence the logistic industry? We are trying to do that because although the total road vehicle volume, um, the heavy and medium trucking constitute only 2% of it, but the emissions coming from that particular 2% is 45% of the total road transport emissions. Now it is huge. So electrification of medium and heavy trucking therefore becomes very important for us. Steel Zero is another campaign where we are working with companies that use steel, and we are asking them to look at procuring green steel. So our program is about procurement of green steel and private procurement of green steel, that is corporate and businesses. Some of the bigger companies that have adopted our programs are Flipkart, Zomato, we have Mahindra working with us, we have JSW working with us, Ashok Leyland working with us. We work with Godrej and Boyens, they are our members, Rahejas, Chalet Hotels. These are all examples of pioneering businesses in India who have taken these campaigns and doing serious business around transition.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, what if somebody's not able to reach the targets that they've set out? You said you set the date, we have the targets, but you need to achieve it. What if they don't? Has it happened?
So it does happen in a way that it is a system. It's not an exam, it's not a race, it's a systemic change. We have a lot of forums. So, for example, we have RE100 forum. We just had a Steel Zero forum in India, in Mumbai, last month. These are annual events where we bring along the members together so that they can learn from their peers, they can discuss about their challenges. We also try to bring businesses closer to government. So we took a lot of effort, and we also took the opportunity of India of presiding over the Clean Energy Ministerial, of India presiding over the G20. We worked very closely with CII, who were the secretariat to the B20 part of it, which is Business 20. And we brought our members and their voices closer to the G20. So, to help them write out in the G20 about what these businesses want to make their change. What are the policy hindrances and how can policies be shifted? So that's how we try to make things easier for our companies, but also know what are their challenges and how can we work with them to support them and also overcome some of those challenges. It's also a learning curve for
Yeah.
us.
I get that point. And I will ask you about the government part of the entire sustainability bit as well. But we have to touch upon COP29 because it was the most recent big event that took place.
Yes.
What did you make of it?
Um, a quick answer will be yes, we are disappointed. A lot of things there are so many moving pieces in this story. A lot of things are happening, but when it comes to climate finance, and historically, the responsibility has not been taken by the developed country. So basically, the question is this, that the developed countries who are responsible for most of the climate change are not taking the responsibilities to support the developing economies to adapt to climate change and build their own resilience, also be able to mitigate. Now, we are a fast developing country, and we need to have that development. It is our right, it is our ambition, and we will do it. We want to be a Viksit Bharat by 2047. We have set a net zero target of 2070, but there is money that we will need across the board to support communities, to support systems, to support our infrastructure development. And there is a responsibility that rests with the polluters. That responsibility is being accepted, but people don't want to do anything about it. And platforms like COP, which are supposed to be the platforms where that responsibility will be accounted for, that accountability will be reminded of, are not proving as beneficial as they should be. So that is what is happening at the moment. And it is becoming increasingly difficult. Now we are a developing economy. We are leaders on climate. There are some of the fantastic policies and pathways that we have taken as a country. But think of low income countries and states that cannot make that change in the limited time that we have, because clock is ticking.
Climate clock, yep, it is ticking. Um, is there something that you think the government can add on? Because India was, well, verbally disappointed, right? We did indicate that in COP29
Absolutely.
as well. But still, the decision was taken despite so many disagreements and so much backlash that came from different developing nations as well. What should the immediate priority be? Climate finance is one. Is there anything that we need to address immediately, on a policy level, maybe on an India level itself, or maybe global level, whichever deems fit?
I think I'll come to the global level first. I think collective responsibility is something that should be pushed for, and it should be pushed for very aggressively. In India, we have very conducive policies at the moment. The policy environment is extremely beneficial, useful, supportive through the transition. I am coming back again to the actors now. I think a lot of action can be done at the level of businesses and corporates. Government and businesses, if they join hands together, they can bring in very quick change. And at Climate Group, our mission statement says that we want to accelerate climate action fast. Most of our Climate Week conversations, which is our flagship event that happens in New York every year in September, alongside UNGA, we push for climate action very fast as possible. So that's one thing. The other thing is at a local level, and we'll come to that. Like, we work with state governments also to bring in and help state governments to not only support national missions, but also bring policies that can help them locate, influence, and find solutions to their local problems, to help their communities, to help agriculture, for example, sectors like water, adaptation, building resilience, all these things. So it is going to be a concerted effort, and we will have to have our focus at the right place.
So, what was the key takeaway from the Climate Week this year? Did you see more satisfaction among stakeholders, whoever joined? What would you say was your biggest learning?
I think in that part of the world, there is a lot of conversation around scaling up, and we support that. Um, a lot of these business houses not only have the potential, the resources, but they also have the responsibility to scale up fast. Because what happens is, when they scale up fast, the supply chain and the ecosystem they operate within will also change. It will have to change, because I am asking for that change. I'm asking for products. I'm asking for that technology. I'm saying I'm a green business. I need those technologies for me to be green. Now, there is an existing market around it, and there is a shift so that new markets are created. It is a chain, it's a domino effect. So we want that to come through. And then, so a lot of businesses that are here in India, that are members, are international businesses who have operations in India. There are some businesses who are members who are Indian businesses. Both ways, it works the same way, right?
That's right. So, this is something that we spoke about at a global level, at a larger level, or maybe at a macro level. There is a lot that needs to be done at a local level as well, because that is where change would start. Do you think we need more local laws, and that's where we can drive more change, and Climate Group can do something there at a local level to make cities sustainable so that, that just continues on layers and we do it nationally then?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great question. So, one, I'll talk about our work. So, we are a secretariat to Under Two Coalition. It is a coalition of more than 170 global subnational governments, state governments, who've come together to bring this coalition to work on climate action, create a community of practitioners of state governments who learn from each other, who it's a platform, it's an international platform that has been created to bring the voices together to find solutions to the problems, and learning from each other is a very much a part of it. Now what happens is that a lot of climate action will happen at a local level, and a lot of domestic policies are implemented at local level. So, state government, in a way, are custodians to those policies and the implementation of those policies, of creating budgetary allocations for those policies to be implemented, influencing the systems as well as influencing people and their lives. So, that becomes very important that way. In India, we have 8 under 2 coalition members, but we are working with about 15 governments through our other programs, where we are also looking at building capacities of state governments to look at how best can they implement something like a state action plan on climate change or state EV policies that are mandates from national government to state governments to act upon. There are also NDCs where state plays a very important role. Like state governments have to say how can the national government actually evolve, adopt a progressive NDC. And there's this bottom up conversation and indication that goes from local level government to national level government to international climate diplomacy. So that relationship is maintained, and state governments are very important part of that relationship.
Got it. So, for the benefit of viewers, NDC's nationally determined contributions, it's something that they would want to know as well. But in that case, so when you have seen actions at global level and India level as well, if you had to pick some states or cities which are spearheading the fight against climate change, or any country as well, which are the countries and cities you would name?
So in India, as I said, we are working with 8 states who are under two coalition members, and each one of them we found are very progressive in their ambition for climate action, but also their internal policies around climate action. I can give examples of several of them, but I would really like to mention Punjab, who have an internal policy called Tandurust Punjab, and it is not a health only initiative. It's a policy that is multi-sectoral, and it looks at different sectors that are useful and important for the state government to look at. Agriculture is part of that, health is part of that, education is part of that, waste management, water is part of that. It's a very holistic scheme. They very recently also announced their net zero roadmap. So that state itself is trying to see how they can become a net zero state.
The stubble burning doesn't impact their plans then? What happens every
See,
winters?
there's several things that are happening. Stubble burning is one of them, and it does hamper plans. But 2050 ambition is bigger than that, because it's not only about air pollution and stuff like that, like stubble burning, as you said, but it's also about looking at sectors such as transport, looking at decarbonization of heavy industries, for example. So it's a bigger problem that they are set out to solve. And in that process, when they kind of implement this roadmap, some of these nuances or the challenges will automatically be solved and will have to be solved as they go forward. Then I'm coming back to another example which is a bit different, and I am going to northeast side of India. We convened very recently a northeast forum where all the seven sisters were present, and we have been working with some of the northeast states, and you see the problems And the solutions that are coming from these states are very different than any other state on the mainland. Mainland, in the sense, the plains and the non hilly regions. They are sitting on the treasure of nature based solutions. We are not ready to learn from them. They are sitting on a plethora of forest and nature based treasures, which is mostly supported, tended by local communities. There's a parallel government that is taking place, and they are working very closely with the government, and this relationship is helping them to restore and conserve that nature that they have. So, there, these states not only need to build resilience for climate impacts, it is it is actually affecting them so much, climate change, but it is also that their traditional values, their traditional cultures are something that they have to preserve and are preserving, but others can learn from. So there's also some kind of reverse learning that needs to happen from there to the entire world, not only in India but outside of India. So this is something we are trying to explore if we can bring forward from our work from that side of the world. So one of the state I'll mention, Tripura, where they are instituting an initiative called BioVillage, which is about supporting villages um, through climate impacts, but also looking at economic development of these villages through practices that are natural, that are pro conservation, pro biodiversity, pro water use, and judicious use of resources. And it's a great example to look at how villages in India are really well equipped
Yeah.
to go forward from there.
Yeah, they just need that push and maybe not a lot of, maybe a little less focus in terms of urbanizing them, because right now we do need
I
some
was
for,
coming to
yeah,
that. I was coming to that. It's exactly what I was going to say because it's very important. See, our ambition for economic development might mean that we will urbanize, and we'll urbanize the same way others are urbanizing. What we have to do here is once learn from these states and these regions, um, but also try to see that they don't commit the mistakes that their other counterparts have done. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's make the story of transition a unique one.
yeah. That is very important. That is, you create your own book or create your own story
Exactly.
without hampering the environment as well. Divya, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for joining in today with your insights and what's happening not only in India but at local and global level as well. These conversations are really important to make and bring about a change and focus more on climate change as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonal. It was a pleasure.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll take your leave on this conversation, but we are going to come back soon with a fresh new episode. Until then, keep writing to us and keep telling us what you want us to discuss on the podcast.